I am Luciana Hartwin. Welcome to the Lilith verse. If you find value here, please share, like, comment, and subscribe. Lilith versus Eve, the first feminist rebellion. We all know the story. A garden, a man, a woman made from his ribs. She was curious. She asked questions. She bit the fruit, and for that they say the world was lost. But what if I told you that wasn't the beginning? What if there was a woman before Eve, one made not from bone, but from earth? A woman who refused to bow, refused to lie beneath. A woman who simply said, no. And for that she was cast out, not just from Eden, but from history. Her name was Lilith, and her story, dark, tangled, and deeply powerful, is calling to more people than ever. So today we ask, was Lilith the first feminist? And if so, what does that make Eve? Two women, two paths, one ancient rebellion. Let's begin. The two first women. Long before the Garden of Eden became the setting for humanity's fall, there were older stories, older gods, older goddesses etched into clay and carried on the wind. Lilith, the forgotten first. Lilith's name first appears in Sumerian myth, whispered among the storm spirits and wind demons. Lily too. Female figures of power and danger, dancing outside the walls of the known world. But the version we know, the Lilith who stood beside Adam, comes from a later Hebrew text called the Alphabet of Ben Sirah, a strange and satirical work, never canonized and never fully erased. In it, Lilith is not made from Adam's rib. She is made, like him, from the dust. She is his equal. But when Adam commands her to lie beneath him, she refuses. She says, "We are the same. I will not serve you." And then she speaks the true name of God, and she leaves. Lilith walks away from paradise, from obedience, from being less. And for that, she becomes a demon, a baby killer, a seductress, a night hag with wings and tangled hair. Because when a woman will not kneel, the world will find a reason to fear her. Eve, the mold of obedience. Eve, on the other hand, is shaped from Adam's body, born second, born to accompany. She lives in Eden until the serpent, the tree, the bite. Not in an act of hunger, an act of curiosity, an act of reaching. And for that, she too is punished, cast out, condemned to pain and submission. But here's the twist. Eve didn't leave paradise. She was banished. Lilith walked. Eve was pushed. Two women. One said no. The other said yes, and paid for it anyway. So what do these stories mean? Why were they told? And why do we still, even now, carry them inside us? That's what we'll explore next, when we look at how Lilith and Eve were split apart, and why women are still asked to choose. The patriarchal split. Lilith and Eve, two sides of the same story until the story split them, not just into characters, but into warnings. One was rewritten into a monster, the other reshaped into a mold. Lilith became the woman to fear, Eve became the woman to be. Good girl, dangerous woman, virgin, temptress, mother, monster. Eve is praised for her pain, for bearing children, for enduring the curse. Lilith is cursed for refusing that fate. And the world keeps asking us, will you suffer quietly or burn for your freedom? But here's the deeper truth. This wasn't just a myth. It was instruction. These archetypes weren't born of spirit. They were shaped by structure, by systems designed to control. Because Lilith, in all her defiance, represents what patriarchal tradition fears most. A woman who wants freedom, not protection. Power, not permission. She cannot be bought. She cannot be owned. And she cannot be silenced. So she was cast into the shadows, so deep and so long that even her name became a curse. Eve, on the other hand, is the perfect cautionary tale. She obeys. She sins. She regrets. She becomes the model of redemption through suffering, punished not for desire, but for daring to reach. Eve is how the system forgives, but never forgets. This is the split we still live with. The choice forced on women for centuries: be adored or be feared, be soft or be powerful, be loved or be free. But what if those were never meant to be opposites? What if the sacred feminine was never meant to be split in two? What if Eve and Lilith aren't rivals, but reflections? Archetype integration. We were never meant to choose. That's the trick of the story. Be Lilith or be Eve. Be wild or be worthy. Be feared or be forgiven. But myths are maps, not prisons. And sometimes the truth is found in the fold between the pages, where rage and tenderness sit beside each other, and neither apologizes for existing. Lilith and Eve were never enemies. That part was added later, inked by trembling hands that feared a woman who could be whole. One walked away from the garden. One was cast out. Both found themselves in exile. So what if we stopped pitting them against each other? What if they were never meant to fight, but to finish a sentence the world refused to hear? In Jungian psychology, we might say, Lilith is shadow, Eve is ego, one hidden, one seen, one buried, one blooming. But when we bury the shadow, it grows teeth. When we silence the hunger, it returns as fire. Healing doesn't come from pretending to be only light. Healing is the slow, sacred work of integration, of looking at that part of yourself that was told, you're too much, and saying back, you are exactly enough. You are not just the bite of the apple. You are the walk into the wilderness. You are the curiosity and the refusal. You are Eve. You are Lilith. You are the whole story now. Why this still matters. You might wonder, and why it matters. These old stories, these dusty myths. Why we should care about a woman who walked away from paradise, or another who tasted knowledge and was punished for it. But look around. We are still being asked to choose. Be quiet, they say, or be dismissed. Be beautiful, but not too bold. Be kind, but don't take up space. They don't say, be like Eve. They don't need to. Those rules are already written in our bones. And if you break them, if you dare to want more, to leave the garden, to refuse to kneel, well, there are still names for women like that. Names like difficult. Names like witch. Names like Lilith. But something is shifting. More and more, I see people, women, men, non-binary kin, standing at the edge of the story and asking, what if I didn't want to be saved? What if I want to be sovereign? What if I want the apple and the wilderness? What if I already am both sinner and saint, both seeker and shadow, and I'm tired of apologizing for the fire in my chest? Lilith's myth has returned because we are ready to tell it differently, not as a cautionary tale, but as a calling, a reminder that the divine does not demand smallness. And Eve, she's not lost. She's waking up, looking around, picking the fruit, not out of rebellion, but out of curiosity, out of hope. This matters because we're still writing the myth every time we speak, every time we walk away, every time we stay and demand better. It matters because some of us are still afraid to claim our rage, still afraid to question, still afraid to leave. But you're not alone, not anymore. You carry Lilith in your bones. You carry Eve in your breath. And your story is not over. The garden and the desert. In one story, Lilith leaves Eden. In another, Eve is cast out. But in the story we're telling now, they meet again. Maybe it's at the edge of a dream, or at a crossroads lit by candlelight. Maybe they don't say anything at first, but sit shoulder to shoulder, one holding knowledge, the other holding fire. We were never meant to choose between them. We are allowed to be tender and untamed. We are allowed to want more. We are allowed to leave. Tell me, if you will, in the comments, do you feel more like Lilith or more like Eve? Or have you found the garden where they both belong? And if you're walking that path, the crooked, powerful one that winds through rage and beauty, then join me when I ask, is Lilith calling you? Protect your fire, trust your hunger, and remember, paradise was never the only place that held magic. If you found value here, please share, like, comment, and subscribe. I am Luciana Hartwin, and this is The Lilith Verse.